So, as I mentioned earlier this year, Friday is for special videos. And this series that this video is part of isn't technically part of Conversations with Fjook. It's, I don't know which series came first, but it's an old series that we haven't done in a while. And we haven't done it in so long, I have misplaced the logo with the stuff for it. That base I had a logo commission for this series, and I've misplaced it. Anyways, this series is, as my co-host knows, Drunkard Senators and More, past Canadian Prime Ministers.
Yep.
My co-host has a political science degree with a focus in Canadian politics, and I have a bunch of questions. My co-host is Anthony.
It's good to be back.
So, we've gone over our first Prime Minister, and we've technically at this point gone over our third Prime Minister without actually doing the video on our second Prime Minister, who I think is, out of those three, to me, is the most interesting. The reason I say that is he refused any title of any kind. He refused Right Honourable, he refused Sir, and Anthony, why did he refuse the titles?
I'm going to jump back. I will debate this to my dying breath. McDonald for me is the most interesting Canadian Prime Minister we've ever had. But again, this is about Mackenzie. Mackenzie is up there. He is definitely an interesting character. Um, but yes, to answer your question, yes. So Alexander Mackenzie refused knighthood from the Queen, not once, not twice, but he declined three offers of knighthood. So it has to do with the fact that Mackenzie came from a working class background and he did not agree with the special rights, the British royalty. He believed in the equality of men. So to quote him, he had said, I've always held those political opinions which point to the universal brotherhood of man, no matter in what rank of life he may have taken his origin. So, as such, he was never designated as Sir, nor as the Right Honourable.
Alberta is a very conservative province. I know you're probably aware of that. I don't know if you're aware that there are people in Alberta that have middle finger stickers with Trudeau in where the hand is, basically giving Trudeau the middle finger. And a lot of these questions in this video are in response to people like that will probably never see this video. But Alexander Mackenzie did a lot of things for Canada. For example, he invented the Supreme Court of Canada. So what would Canada be like if we didn't have a Supreme Court?
It's not that Mackenzie invented the Supreme Court. It was written in the Constitution Act of 1867 that the federal parliament could create a general court of appeal for Canada. This ends up becoming our own Supreme Court. Um, until that time, um, until that time, court or decisions could be appealed to what was called the Judicial Committee of the Privy Council. And again, uh, even after we had the Supreme Court, decisions could still be appealed to this body until 1949. And again, this body still exists to this day and is the highest court of appeal for certain British territories. Some Commonwealth countries and a few UK bodies still use this judicial committee of the Privy Council. Um, so again, in the past, it acted as a court of last resort for the entire British Empire. And so, just to reiterate, it still serves as the Court of Appeal for several independent Commonwealth nations, some Crown dependencies, and some of the British overseas territories. So, had we not had a Supreme Court created, we still would have continued to refer to this body until now, until present. Whereas we were still using this body until 1949. But again, it should also be noted that we did have courts even before 1800s. So in the 18th century, we did have courts in present day Quebec, Ontario, New Brunswick, and Nova Scotia.
How do people get appointed to the Privy Council?
So, sorry. The looking at who is presently justices in the judicial committee of the Privy Council, it seems that they're all appointed judges or worked in the legal field within the United Kingdom. And again, while we had a small little break while I looked this up, it was interesting. Like these cases that they're overviewing and deciding on, are from all over the place: the Bahamas, Trinidad and Tobago, the Cayman Islands, and Jamaica.
It sounds
So
like it sounds like by having our own Supreme Court, we can get answers quicker.
yeah, we can get our own answers quicker, and it allows us to have a Canadian case. Like it allows us to rely more on Canadian precedents. Although we still use like precedents from other jurisdictions, such as the UK or other Commonwealth countries, this does allow us to examine and make decisions that uh, uphold Canadian laws.
I know when I go and vote, only I know who I voted for. And even if I tell even you who I voted for, there's always the chance that that might not be true because we have secret ballots in Canada. How would it work if Alexander Mackenzie didn't institute secret ballots?
So again, this is one of those things that had Mackenzie not done it, it would have probably been implemented in due course. But we have to give him credit um, for the one passing the legislation and getting this done. But again, before his election, like if you just look at the first election in 1867, like this was the gathering of landowners. This was literally gatherings in like pubs and public spaces, and people would vote in public, aye, nay, and they and it would be very hard to record the actual vote tallies in this place because there is no ballot, there is no attestation. You're not showing your ID to show that you are who you say you are.
Doesn't that mean that you could bribe people easier?
Oh, most definitely. It was rampant back in the day. It could be as much as like a sum of money, or it could have just been a pint at the bar.
So, I know as a British colony, even up to 1867, we trained our military officers in the UK that was stationed in the colony of Canada, Nova Scotia, and New Brunswick. Is that what happened up until and I also know that Mackenzie instituted the Royal Canadian Military College. So I'll just ask the original question: how would we have properly trained military officers without the Royal Military College? I think I might have answered that, but you're better with your words on this.
No worries. Yeah, so before the Royal Military College was built in 1867 or established in 1876, there had been previous calls to create military colleges. So Canada pre-Confederation had a few military colleges, although the military colleges in London and Hamilton were disbanded in 1865. There were schools in Quebec, Montreal, Kingston, and Toronto that were retained after Confederation. And then 1868, there were schools of cavalry and artillery that were formed in Toronto. and another school of artillery that was formed in Montreal. But these colleges were generally led and taught by British officers. There would be few, if any, Canadian officers that could get promoted to these positions. So the Royal Military College of Canada was the first military college to be established in a colonial dependency, and it served as a double function. It allowed for the preparation of cadets for civilian careers as well as for military commissions.
Um, Another thing that I know Alexander Mackenzie did is establish the Auditor General. He did a lot considering he just had one term as Prime Minister.
Yeah, again, he was an active prime minister during a very early time in our country. And so, again, he did lay the foundations for a lot of these institutions that we now rely on very well. So, like, again, so with the auditor general is responsible for the auditing of all government activities. So again, this is not only financial audits, this is also like performance audits and other special examinations of the way that programs and the machinery of government operate.
With that said, about the Auditor General, it sounds like without it, the Canadian government would be able to get away with more shenanigans. Is that correct?
Um, I wouldn't necessarily agree with you, but again, because again, like the auditor general is the office is always backwards looking. So it's not necessarily an immediate fear of reprisal, but it could be that if something's uncovered in the future. So again, the prime minister, cabinet level ministers, and other politicians and staff can conduct themselves in unbecoming ways. But again, they have to have the fear. They have the fear of being caught. And then again, if we look at what happened with the what's now known as the sponsorship scandal, this not only brought a government down to minority status, but it also helped in their defeat in a precedent election. So again, like these audit functions do serve the public, but again, it doesn't prevent politicians from doing something bad or unbecoming, but it definitely will ensure that it is caught.
I don't know if this is true of other liberal prime ministers, but to me it seems like Alexander Mackenzie tried to loosen our ties with the United Kingdom as much as he could in the short time that he had. While MacDonald was more focused on expanding Canada with the railway and other things like that. I know that's an oversimplification, but would you agree with that at all?
So I will agree that since Mackenzie was an equalitarian, where all men are created equal, I will give you that he was not a supporter of the monarchy, and I think he did want to make us. I wouldn't say he wanted us to become the United States or emulate the United States, but he did want to move us away from our ties with, or from the institution of the monarchy. And whereas Sir John A, you could say that without his relationship with the monarchy, we may not even have the country we have. But again, yes, one of his goals was to expand our country. McDonald's goals was to expand the country from coast to coast to coast, and yeah, they're definitely two different individuals, and they're both interesting. And if you have like more time, definitely do read them. Definitely do look up their books and other materials that are on them, and give them a good read.
As we've discussed in this video, Alexander Mackenzie was our first Liberal Prime Minister, and without him, at least the early years of Canada would be very different. The secret ballots wouldn't have come in until much later. All the things he did probably wouldn't have come in. Not under, definitely not under MacDonald, because MacDonald wasn't focused on that type of stuff. So, without a Liberal Prime Minister of Canada, without Alexander McKenna, I believe Canada would be a totally different place than what we have right now.
I will give you that.
Any parting words, Anthony?
Again, thank you for your time. Hopefully, we can get through the other prime ministers, and that the interval between the videos are closer to one and versus videos 1 and 2 versus 2 and 3.
I think next we're on Prime Minister for John someone.
It could be Sir John Thompson. But again, so after MacDonald died, it's a period of a rapid succession of prime ministers.
Yeah, well, Abbott did get sick while being prime minister. That definitely helped speed up the rapid succession.
Yep.
We will. Thank you for your time, Anthony.